This is such a great bunch of guys, and it's just been so fabulous the way they played for me. And it sounds all corny, to start talking like that, but I told these guys before the game, I don't care what happens, I wouldn't trade you guys for any guys in the world.
Picture the old Boston Garden in the early 1960s. The parquet floor creaks under the weight of giants, the air is thick with cigar smoke, and in the center of it all stands Bill Russell. Towering yet calm, he is the anchor of the Boston Celtics dynasty. 11 championships in just 13 seasons, 5 most valuable player awards, countless defensive stands that changed the rhythm of the game. To many, he is not only the greatest winner in basketball history but also the conscience of the sport. But behind all those banners and numbers lies a deeper question. For a man who faced nearly every great player of his era, who did he admire most? Whose talent, determination, and spirit could earn the respect of a competitor as relentless as Bill Russell? This is not just a list of names. It is a reflection of what Russell valued: intelligence on the court, resilience under pressure, artistry in the game, and the kind of leadership that inspired teammates and intimidated rivals. When he looked back, in the later years of his life, Russell chose 5 men who left the greatest impression on him. Some were his fiercest rivals, others were symbols of courage and skill that even he could not ignore. Today, we step into his mind and retrace those choices. From bitter rivalries that became bonds of respect, to breathtaking performances that redefined positions, this is the story of the 5 basketball players Bill Russell himself called his favorites. If Bill Russell had to choose one player who defined his career, it would be Wilt Chamberlain. The two men were opposites in nearly every way. Wilt was the unstoppable force, a 7'1" giant who once scored over 100 points in a single game. Russell was the immovable anchor, the strategist who made defense an art form. Their battles stretched across an entire decade: Celtics versus Warriors, then Celtics versus Sixers, and finally against the Lakers. Each matchup felt less like a basketball game and more like a clash of philosophies. Russell admired Wilt not just for his sheer athleticism, but for the way he forced him to raise his own level. Chamberlain's presence meant Russell could never take a night off, never let his guard down. Every rebound, every blocked shot, every possession was a test of will. In many ways, Wilt was the mirror that reflected Russell's greatness. Away from the spotlight, their relationship revealed something deeper. Off the court, the two were friends who dined together, laughed together, and respected each other's humanity. But once the ball was tossed into the air, friendship was left behind. It was competition at its purest form. Russell often said that Chamberlain made him a better player every single night, and that without Wilt, his own career might not have reached such legendary heights. To Russell, Wilt was not simply an opponent. He was a measuring stick, the ultimate rival who turned every contest into a battle worth remembering. And that respect earned through sweat, bruises, and years of intense duels is why Wilt Chamberlain had to be on Bill Russell's list of favorite players. If Wilt Chamberlain was the mountain Bill Russell had to climb night after night, then Jerry West was the warrior who never stopped coming back, no matter how many times he fell. Known as Mr. Clutch, West became the face of the Los Angeles Lakers during an era dominated by Russell's Celtics. Time after time, West brought his team to the finals, only to see Russell and Boston block his path to glory. What struck Russell most was not West's defeats, but his determination to rise again. Game after game, year after year, West carried the Lakers on his shoulders, draining jump shots with perfect form, pushing through exhaustion, and refusing to concede. Even when the Celtics claimed victory, Russell respected the way West stood tall in the face of constant heartbreak. To Russell, that kind of resilience was as valuable as any trophy. There was one moment that stayed with him above all. In the 1969 finals, West became the only player in history to win the finals' Most Valuable Player award while playing for the losing team. To Russell, that recognition was more than a statistic, it was proof that greatness is not defined solely by winning, but by the way a man performs under impossible odds. Russell admired Jerry West because he represented the essence of competition. He was relentless, precise, and honorable, the kind of rival who gave meaning to every championship banner in Boston. For Russell, West was not a defeated opponent, he was a respected equal, a symbol of perseverance, and a reminder that true greatness can shine even in the shadow of defeat. Among all the players Bill Russell faced, Elgin Baylor stood apart for his artistry. While Wilt Chamberlain represented power and Jerry West embodied resilience, Baylor brought a sense of poetry to the game. As a forward for the Los Angeles Lakers, he was one of the first players to truly take basketball into the air, hanging, twisting, and gliding in ways that left crowds stunned. In an era where most scoring came from set shots and bank shots, Baylor turned the hardwood into a canvas. Russell often spoke about how difficult it was to prepare for Baylor. No matter how disciplined Boston's defense was, Baylor had a way of breaking structure with his creativity. He could drive into the paint, hang in the air a split second longer than seemed humanly possible, and release the ball just beyond a defender's reach. For Russell, who prided himself on timing and anticipation, Baylor was a puzzle he never fully solved. One legendary performance still echoed through Russell's memory, the night Baylor scored over 70 points in a single game. It was not just the total that amazed him, but the way Baylor did it with grace, variety, and constant pressure. To Russell, that night symbolized how Baylor could bend the game to his will without ever losing his elegance. More than the numbers, though, Russell admired Baylor's courage. Playing through injuries, carrying a franchise that often fell short against the Celtics, Baylor remained a symbol of loyalty and creativity. He was the kind of opponent who forced Russell to stretch his own imagination as a defender, to think in new ways about positioning and anticipation. In Baylor, Russell saw not just a rival, but a pioneer. He considered him one of the most gifted forwards of all time, a man who brought beauty to the grind of competition. And that sense of artistry is why Elgin Baylor earned his place on Bill Russell's list of favorites. If Elgin Baylor was the artist and Jerry West the fighter, Oscar Robertson was the complete architect of the game. Known as the Big O, Robertson redefined what a guard could be. At 6'5", he was bigger than most players at his position, yet he moved with the smooth control of a floor general. To Bill Russell, Oscar was not just another opponent, he was a revolution in sneakers. Russell watched in awe as Robertson did something no one thought possible, averaging a triple-double for an entire season in 1961-62. Points, rebounds, assists, he seemed to dominate every column of the box score. For a defender like Russell, who prided himself on shutting down opponents, Robertson posed an impossible question. How do you stop a player who can beat you in every way? If you cut off his drive, he found an open teammate. If you played the pass, he would rise for the jumper. What Russell admired most was Oscar's composure. He never looked rushed, never seemed overwhelmed by the moment. Even under the pressure of hostile crowds and relentless defenses, Robertson dictated the tempo like a conductor leading an orchestra. Facing him, Russell understood that basketball was not only about power or endurance, but about balance, control, and vision. Though the Celtics often found ways to outlast Robertson's teams, Russell carried deep respect for him. He considered Oscar a symbol of completeness, a man who represented everything a basketball player could strive to be. To Russell, watching Oscar Robertson was like seeing the future of the game unfold in real time. And so, when Russell thought of the players who earned his admiration, Oscar's name was never in doubt. For him, the Big O was not only a rival, but a masterclass in what it meant to elevate the sport. The last name on Bill Russell's list spoke less about raw numbers and more about heart. Willis Reed, the captain of the New York Knicks, was never the tallest man on the floor, nor the most celebrated scorer. But to Russell, he represented the essence of leadership and courage. Reed's impact was measured not only in points or rebounds, but in the way he lifted an entire franchise with his spirit. Russell's respect for Reed crystallized on one unforgettable night in 1970. It was Game 7 of the finals, Knicks against the Lakers. Reed had torn a muscle in his leg earlier in the series, and most believed he would never play again. Yet as Madison Square Garden buzzed with anticipation, Reed limped out of the tunnel. The crowd erupted. He managed only a few baskets, but his presence electrified his teammates. Inspired, the Knicks stormed to victory and claimed their first championship. For Russell, who had built his career on sacrifice and defense, Reed's courage was the ultimate statement of what basketball could mean. It was not about individual glory, it was about inspiring others, about standing tall even when your body refused to cooperate. Reed showed that greatness was not just a matter of talent, but of will. Russell admired the way Reed carried himself throughout his career, steady, unselfish, and deeply respected in the locker room. To him, Reed embodied the kind of leadership that statistics could never fully capture. He was a reminder that banners and trophies come from collective belief, sparked by one man's determination. That is why Willis Reed belonged on Bill Russell's list of favorites. In Reed, Russell saw a reflection of his own values, resilience, leadership, and the ability to inspire a team when it mattered most. When Bill Russell looked back on his extraordinary career, he did not simply see the banners hanging from the rafters or the trophies on the shelf. He remembered the men who tested him, inspired him, and ultimately defined his journey. Wilt Chamberlain, the rival who forced him to reach higher every night. Jerry West, whose resilience turned defeat into a mark of greatness. Elgin Baylor, the artist who painted the game with creativity. Oscar Robertson, the complete guard who embodied balance and control. And Willis Reed, the leader whose courage transformed a team. Together, these 5 names tell us as much about Russell as they do about themselves. They show us what he valued: skill, resilience, artistry, completeness, and leadership. For a man who won more than anyone else, it was never just about victory. It was about respect, about the bond between competitors, and about the lessons drawn from battles on the court. Russell's list reminds us that legends are shaped not in isolation, but in the crucible of rivalry and admiration. He knew that iron sharpens iron, and that even the greatest champion needs worthy opponents to leave behind a lasting legacy. Now the question passes to you: which of these 5 do you believe was truly the player who tested Bill Russell the most? Don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more timeless stories from the golden era of basketball.